Welcome, Motenta people. The man who would become president was bad at school, but excellent at everything else. He was an excellent sportsman, renowned for grit, passion, and an excellent work ethic. These traits would lead him to greater heights outside the shores of sports, to the glitz and glamour of Hollywood, and ultimately, the presidency. That introverted boy who was never afraid to take responsibility grew up to become the leader of men. That man, that legend, is Ronald Reagan. And few people can experience the type of life he lived. Ronald Reagan fell in love with his illegitimate daughter? Make sure to watch the video until the end and leave your thoughts in the comments. If you are new here, join our wonderful community by subscribing to the Motentas channel. Ronald Reagan, the man who brought Hollywood to the White House. Shirley Temple revealed in an interview that Reagan was her best on-screen kisser. The public didn't receive that statement well, and certainly didn't receive the film she and Reagan played co-leads in, The Hagen Girl. In that film, Shirley played a 19-year-old lady who was a love interest to Ronald Reagan's 36-year-old character. Shirley's character was thought to be the illegitimate daughter of Reagan's character. Weird, isn't it? That film was supposed to be Reagan's return to the screen after he was yanked from the motion pictures at the peak of his career. Before the military call-up in 1941, he played George Gipp, a Notre Dame football star in Knute Rockne's All-American, which was a 1940 biography film of Knute Rockne. In fact, he pitched the idea to the big bosses at Warner Brothers with his written screenplay. It was rejected, but when the project was greenlit, he got a prominent role as George Gipp and got renowned as a result of his performance. Also, he had gotten an Oscar nomination for his role in the film King's Row, where his character is an accident victim who woke up with his leg cut off by a doctor whose heart was set on vengeance. His acting in that film was sublime, and the way he said that line, "Where's the rest of me?" sent ripples of sympathy throughout the audience. Reagan lost that Oscar and his career to the Army, where he couldn't even serve as a combat soldier on account of his bad eyesight. He ended up doing what he loved most for the Army. He made films and training videos for them. From steadily building his career from his first film, Love is on the Air, where he played a radio news reporter, Reagan lost his steam, but an opportunity arose for him to remain relevant in Hollywood as he got a role to host and act in the TV show General Electric Theater. Previously, he had misgivings about TV shows, but they gave him an offer that banished his misgivings. Interestingly, Ronald Reagan would make a fortune as a TV producer. He would be accused of stifling competition and other underhanded practices, unbecoming of a righteous man. This wouldn't be the first time he would reportedly do something against religion. After all, a biographer, Bob Spitz, believes he impregnated his then-fiancée, Margaret Cleaver. Spitz believed Margaret went to give birth to Ronald's love child during her absence from Eureka College, where she and Reagan went. Spitz would make some serious allegations against Cleaver, who he all but called a liar for claiming she went to the University of Illinois. However, Spitz's allegations had been proven to be nothing but sensational. After all, yearbook pictures and official academic transcripts claim Margaret did get to the University of Illinois to take up more courses. Ronald Reagan, despite his flaws, would attain the highest political office in the world, the President of the United States. He had a legacy of reviving the ailing American economy, despite all odds. But this was not without some drawbacks, such as the budget deficits and increase in America's debt. Despite this, he is someone Americans remember fondly. When Edward Jack Reagan and Nellie Wilson Reagan welcomed Ronald Wilson Reagan into their lives on February 6, 1911, in Tampico, Illinois, they felt immense joy that their family had expanded. Ronald would be the second born after Neil Reagan, who they gave birth to in 1908, 3 years before. Jack was a street smart of Irish descent, and his mother had a Scottish-Irish descent. The fat little Dutchman, his father would nickname him, due to his appearance when he was born, and Reagan would adopt the nickname, as he preferred it, to his government name. The Reagans were inches from poverty, as they barely made ends meet. The first apartment they lived in when Dutch was born didn't even have plumbing. So like most poor families in the United States, they moved around a lot. Moving around didn't allow Dutch to make many friends, which allowed him to learn the importance of a tight family unit. The Reagans were a tight bunch, so much so that the usual rules attached to most families became blurred. For instance, the Reagan kids would call their parents by their first names when they reached high school. Eventually, Ronald and his family stopped moving around when Jack switched sales jobs and settled in Dixon, Illinois. Before then, they had lived in places like Galesburg, Chicago, and Monmouth. Dixon helped shape Dutch to become the man that would light up Hollywood and the whole world. Moving around made him an introvert, and in Dixon, this was initially prominent. And Dutch loved playing by himself and his 10 soldiers. If he wasn't playing, he would be reading books, and he had a small collection of books. Alongside his small collection of books, he also had a collection of mounted butterflies. He loved reading about animals. Dutch revealed that he read his favorite book on whole wolves so much he memorized the words. He also loved reading books on natural history. The permanence of Dixon proved perfect for Ronald, as it offered the conditions that brought Ronald out of his shell. Dixon was like a large family for Reagan, with its 10,000 people and a strong sense of collectivity and love that people shared. The people there would put significant efforts into ensuring that the people around them got help when they needed help. Ronald would begin to make friends, have fun like regular kids, and boy did he also get into a lot of trouble. He would spend some of his days adventuring through the woods that surrounded Dixon. He swam, fished in the river, and hunted muskrats. When it came to mischief, the future president was full of it. He would get into fights with other boys, and perhaps the most prominent of them being the Dixon Bridge situation. When he was 11, Ronald Reagan may have accidentally launched a rocket at the Dixon Bridge. He got into so much trouble for that one. It earned him a short trip to the police station and a large fine. However, apart from the usual youthful shenanigans, Ronald Reagan's parents, especially his mom, ensured that they raised a fine young man. Through his mother's influence, Reagan became religious and learned piety. However, Ronald's mom didn't force her beliefs on her son. She was a disciple of Christ. But when Ronald chose to baptize as a disciple of Christ when he was 11, it was his choice, and part of the things that influenced his decision was a book. His favorite character in that book, the printer of Udell's, was a devout Christian. Ronald's mom believed that her son should decide their faith for themselves, and while she wasn't pressuring them, she raised them with prohibitionist principles. She also raised them to help the needy. Another significant point of how their parents raised Reagan boys is them telling them to not judge people by skin color. This motivated Reagan to have friends among Jews and African Americans. They weren't influenced by the biases that were common at the time, although this affected their popularity. Dutch's parents didn't only focus on building his morality, they encouraged him and his brother to focus on school. Since the parents didn't have much formal education, they wanted Reagan and his brother to surpass them where they had failed. Although Ronald's dad, Jack, got a diploma in shoe sales and aimed to have his own shoe store, he wanted something more for his boys. However, Dutch had other plans for school, and he threw himself at sports rather than his studies. He was passionate about football, and while he didn't have a natural talent, he had the most impressive work ethic among all the players. But he wasn't only about sports. He had much energy left and decided to try acting, which he thoroughly enjoyed. For someone that would rather be alone and mostly unknown, his extracurricular activities brought the world's attention to him. Everyone truly saw Ronald Reagan and realized that he was more than just the introverted boy they perceived him to be. He became popular soon enough as he began to act in school and church plays. He became a popular guy in school and became the student body leader in his last year. In 1928, Ronald Reagan went to the Disciples of Christ Eureka College in Eureka, Illinois, where he majored in economics and sociology. As in high school, he focused on extracurricular activities. He continued to play football and was a cheerleader for the college's basketball team. Also, he joined the school's acting group, where he won numerous awards for his outstanding performances. Soon, he added track and swimming to the sports he participated in. He was so exceptional at swimming that he was made the captain of the swimming team. His being captain of the swimming team isn't surprising, considering he worked as a lifeguard in his high school years during the summer. He continued this during the summers of his college years. He became a student leader in college, leading a protest against the college when authorities decided to lay off teaching staff due to the impending economic depression. Reagan also held other non-sport positions in college. He was a yearbook editor, headed the Booster Club as its president, and became the student body president as well. Notably, he got into a relationship with Margaret Cleaver, and the two looked poised to marry as they got engaged. Eventually, he graduated in 1932, which was a big deal as he had to take up multiple jobs to help with college costs. He worked as a hamburger cook, washed tables, and continued his summer lifeguard role. Out of all these jobs, he hated the hamburger cook role and loved his lifeguard role, which allowed him to save more than 70 lives. Unfortunately for him, after college, Margaret Cleaver broke off the engagement, and he didn't get the job he wanted as a sporting goods manager. However, while it took longer to get back on the romantic scene, Reagan pivoted on his job choice. Upon the advice of a teacher when he was 21, Reagan joined the World of Chiropractic radio station in Davenport, Iowa, as an announcer. Reagan announced University of Iowa games for a while, where he was transferred to WHO Des Moines, Iowa, and became a regular announcer on much better pay. He earned $100 at first, which for his age was a lot, and that income soon quadrupled as his popularity at the station grew. He added an exotic flair to announcing games, making games more dramatic and exciting for the audience. After spending 5 years in radio, Reagan wanted something more. His acting skills were wasting away, but they would no longer be. And in 1937, using the plot of covering Chicago Cubs training games in Chicago, he pursued his acting dream. Reagan got an agent, John Michael John, as Hollywood required, and attended tasking screen tests at Warner Brothers. Reagan got the test by exaggerating his acting experience to his agent. Warner Brothers wanted more tests, but Reagan declined. Reagan told the picture giant he had to be at work at Iowa. After he left Iowa, Reagan got the telegram that would introduce him to Hollywood. His Hollywood beginning wasn't as spectacular as he got B films, but he kept his head down and kept at it. Shortly after, he was persuaded to join the Screen Actors Guild, a position he would later use to clean Hollywood of threats to national security. In 1938, on the set of the film Brother Rat, Reagan met Jane Wyman, who would later become his wife in 1940. The two would have their first child in 1941, a girl named Maureen, adopt a boy named Michael in 1945, and suffer a tragedy in 1947. In 1947, their premature baby girl died, and this would eventually end their relationship. Despite the setback thrown before him, Reagan would continue with his progress. Known to be an outspoken and fierce person who always stood up for other people, Reagan's ascendancy to become the president of the Screen Actors Guild in 1946 was only a matter of time. He served for 5 years, which lasted till 1960. During that period, he used his position to help to protect small actors and also help purge Hollywood of communist elements who were believed to have infiltrated Hollywood. Codenamed T-10, Reagan provided intel to the FBI, who went after Hollywood actors and actresses with communistic tendencies. This was how he met his soulmate and the love of his life, Nancy Reagan, in 1952. At the height of this Hollywood purge, Nancy's name was found on the list of Hollywood personalities who were communist. She wasn't even a Hollywood big name, and she had just passed her MGM screen test not too long ago. Nancy contacted Reagan, who had a meeting with her over dinner, and explained that there was in fact another Nancy Davis. The two connected at that point, but they didn't form an exclusive dating relationship. One thing was undeniable: they had a powerful connection. The two committed to each other and got married later in 1952. At this point, Reagan had become an active participant in politics. His role as the president of the Screen Actors Guild gave him the platform to speak openly against communism and other activities he considered to be un-American. Initially a liberal Democrat, Reagan slowly became a conservative Republican, and he championed conservative ideals. He openly supported different Republican candidates and would go as far as giving speeches on their behalf. He became a national political figure for his passionate speech for Republican presidential candidate Barry Goldwater. At this point, Reagan's political clout was undeniable, and in 1966, he finally took up the mantle and started his own journey into elective politics. He campaigned vigorously and won the heart of the people of California, where he would become a 2-term governor. This helped prepare the field for him as an eventual president of the United States. After 2 previously unsuccessful attempts, he got the Republican presidential ticket in 1980 and became the oldest American president at 69. As if this win wasn't sensational enough, Reagan would have an attempt on his life 2 months after his inaugural speech. The bullet pierced his lungs and just missed his heart. And despite the gravity of the situation, Reagan would joke, "Honey, I forgot to duck." Nancy didn't find the joke funny. She got more anxious and incredibly overprotective of him. All through his political exploits, Reagan stayed committed to Nancy. They had the kind of love that you would only see in novels. The two gave birth to 2 children. Patty in 1952, and Ron in 58. Despite the birth of their kids, their commitment to each other was paramount and unwavering. The two, as Karen Tumulty writes in her biography of Nancy Reagan, The Triumph of Nancy Reagan, usually had cinematic displays of affection. Their love affair was probably more important than their love for their children, Larry King once said in an interview about Reagan and Nancy's love. John Hutton, their White House physician during President Reagan's second term, said to Tumulty about their love, "Good Christopher Columbus, how does anyone keep a romance going for this many years with that intensity?" Sadly, the light of their romance waned when Reagan had Alzheimer's. Hutton would report to Tumulty that one time, when Nancy played one of their songs and asked for a dance, Ronnie brushed her away. When Ronald died, Nancy felt his death and would always keep his picture near her bedside before she herself passed away. Ronald Reagan lived a fulfilled life and grew to become a hero to most people. A multi-talented man who made a mark in every field he touched, Ronald Reagan lived more than a regular life. He had shown his uniqueness right from his childhood days and stayed true to himself on the biggest stages of life. However, Alzheimer's wouldn't allow him to enjoy his old age until death gave him a blissful escape. If you like this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe. It's not uncommon for an actor to enter politics or vice versa. This is what Charlton Heston did. But did you know that Charlton Heston attacked his film director? I'm sure you're curious why. Watch this video and find out.